70,000 people are here, and Bob Dylan is the reason for it.
Inspired by their true story.
For anyone who's gonna hold your attention on a stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
And starring Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan. He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play loud!
To change everything.
Make some noise, BD.
Timothy Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro. A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
Hello and welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Glad to have you with me. Let me do the housekeeping out of the gate for you guys. So I am not live with you, and I want to explain why out of the gate before we do this. As you can imagine, the devastation from Hurricane Helene is pretty awful. And I, on battery doing this, no power. And I want to make sure you have a fresh show. I'm going to have to do storm coverage on my flagship station because there's just a lot to process and deal with locally here in Georgia. And while I have a national show, I'm also an employee of my flagship station, and they really need me today to do local coverage. It is necessary. So I'm on tape with you guys doing this as the storm is roaring in the background. Already knowing what has happened down south of me. And it's just, your prayers are genuinely appreciated for everybody. And it's not good. And there were, at 5 p.m. last night in Atlanta, cadaver dogs brought in from out of state to be stationed to head south as the sun rises here today. And you know, it's bad. It has been a very bad storm. It strengthened after I got off air yesterday, got to Category 4. And you know, the power's been out. It's been bad. So I can't be with you live. I am doing 8 hours of radio today. I'm doing 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. On my flagship station, in addition to these 3 hours with you that I'm recording before that on battery. And it's going to be a grueling day for me. So thank you very much for your patience and prayers and your understanding of what's happening. Now, I want to bring you the latest on Eric Adams. And I try to be a guy who tells you the truth. I got an email yesterday from a listener who said, I told my wife when Eric Adams started complaining about the migrants that he was going to get indicted, and he did. So you can't convince me it wasn't because of immigration. We have become tribal in our thinking, and I'm not going to argue with you on this. I want you to know truthfully, Eric Adams was not indicted because of his bold stand on immigration. In fact, truthfully, the Biden administration has liked Eric Adams talking about migrants and what's happening the way he has, because he routinely says it's not Joe Biden's fault, it's Donald Trump's fault, and Joe Biden's trying to clean up the mess. Now, I realize that you haven't gotten that coverage because of the media outlets that you listen to, but in fact, Eric Adams is not one of us. Now that he's been indicted, I guess he'll become the Republican presidential nominee in 2028, but he's not one of us. And in fact, he has used his criticisms of migrants to defend the Biden administration and attack the Trump administration. So no, he wasn't indicted for immigration. Let me explain to you the parameters of the indictment as more has come out overnight. Eric Adams got $10 million in bribes and a lot of free travel from the Turks. It was not just for a building, although the building was a key component of this. So let's back up. Several years ago, the Turkish government was building a 38-story building in New York that they were going to use as their consulate, among other things. The president of Turkey was coming to the United States, and they wanted the building open. The building was poorly built. And as a result of it being poorly built, it didn't pass. It did not pass code. So you got the president of Turkey coming. They want to get it open. They send a note to Eric Adams. They say, your turn, pay us back. You got to open this building. And so Eric Adams essentially told the fire inspector that if you didn't approve it, you would be fired. So he approved it, even though it wasn't up to code, so they could have the building open. Now, a lot of people said, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. You're indicting him over just that. He got $10 million for just that. No. Turns out, based on the indictment, Eric Adams has had an ongoing relationship with the Turks. He was doing quid pro quo for them for quite some time, and they promised him that they could keep this relation going and get him all the way to the White House. Now, if you know anything about Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, what you need to know is he's got an ego. He has a massive ego. When Eric Adams was running for mayor of New York City as a law and order Democrat, Eric Adams planted profiles of Eric Adams, allegedly, that talked about how he had the right message for the Democrats and he could go the distance. Unlike Rudy Giuliani, Eric Adams could go from Gracie Mansion to the White House. And those turn out to be profiles that he himself allegedly wanted out there. Had a huge ego. And it turns out that the Turks were stroking that ego and saying, just stick with us, and we'll have this great relationship, and we'll get you there eventually. Therein lies the problem for Eric Adams. It's not immigration, it's his ego. But I do believe the Democrats are very happy with the number of Republicans who went immediately to immigration. Because as I noted yesterday, he's now the third prominent Democrat, fourth big progressive, to be exposed for ties to foreign governments. You got Max Boot's wife, who is an analyst, progressive, tied to South Korea. You've got Eric Adams tied to Turkey. You've got Bob Menendez tied to Egypt. And you've got the deputy chief of staff to the governor of New York tied to China. In the Chinese are the most nefarious ones. And by the way, full intellectually honest disclosure here, I suspect there are Republicans as well taking money under the table from foreign governments. But what's so notable about it is we just haven't found any of those. And let's not forget Hunter Biden as well. We can put Hunter Biden in here. Hunter Biden, of course, gets special privilege because of his last name. Eric Adams does not. Lida Chin does not. Bob Menendez does not. What's her name? Kinda Max Boot does not. Eric Adams, though, he, being the mayor of New York, probably could have lasted longer if he was competent to. And that's something people forget. He wasn't competent. Marion Barry, the corrupt mayor of Washington, D.C., could last as long as he did because he kept people safe, he kept crime down, he kept the potholes filled. Eric Adams doesn't do any of that. Eric Adams has been a garbage mayor of New York. Yes, he said everything you want to hear about immigration, but he hasn't done anything about it. And he's praised Joe Biden and attacked Donald Trump for being the root cause of the immigration problem. Don't forget that. He's been attacking Trump on it. He hasn't filled the potholes. He hasn't done well with infrastructure. He hasn't fixed the sewer flooding issue. He hasn't done anything with the school system issues in New York. He hasn't done anything with the crime issues aggressively. He's got the out-of-control prosecutor. He hasn't done a good job as mayor of New York City. On top of everything else, he hasn't been competent. A corrupt politician who's competent can go the distance. A corrupt politician who's also incompetent cannot, particularly when that incompetent politician is getting $10 million as mayor. Maybe as a senator you could get that much money, but as mayor you're just greedy. And you got an ego where you're feeding the newspaper stories that you could go the distance to the White House. That burns bridges with all the wrong people. He's played his hand badly. I guess, though, since he has gotten indicted and the right thinks it's for immigration, he will soon become a Republican and run for president in 2028 and maybe get the nomination because all these people are convinced, oh, he's going to fight for immigration. Never mind he attacked Donald Trump about it. He's going to fight on immigration. Never mind he hadn't done anything in New York City about it either. There are things he could have done, but he didn't do. That's what's going on here. There's a lot of clever thinking out there, a lot of conspiratorial thinking, a lot of thinking that, hey, this is what my tribe believes, therefore I believe it. You know, I think I mentioned earlier, I got an angry message from a guy yesterday who said, I told my wife the moment he started speaking out about immigration that he was going to get indicted. And he did. Therefore, it must be about immigration. Or what about this? Turns out the investigation into Eric Adams started way back in 2021. Before he started talking about immigration, the feds were already investigating him. They were already investigating him well before his play on immigration, where, again, he attacked Trump, not Joe Biden. This has been an ongoing issue for him. There's not a conspiracy. It's not immigration. You are wrong if you think that. Even if you don't think you're wrong, you're actually wrong. It turns out this is about Democrats taking money from foreign governments. You know, in Canada, the Trudeau administration is being brought down because a lot of his party members have been taking money from the Chinese. The Chinese have been playing an active role in Canadian politics here in this country, also in New York, also in a Democratic primary. A Chinese dissident was chased out of the primary by Chinese government harassment. Everybody's so focused on immigration, they're just ignoring the fact that all these foreign governments think they can play in with our politicians, and so many of our politicians are letting them. This is not a good thing. $10 million and convincing him they would fund him all the way to the White House, where they would be his guy. And if he did anything wrong, they would expose him, and he, not they, would go to jail. They have diplomatic immunity. The ego of this man is something, and an ego with incompetence will bring you down. And that is what has happened. That is what's going on here. Eric Adams is indicted for allegedly taking $10 million, building a long-term relationship with the Turks. Just remarkable that he thought he could get away with it. Whether you believe it's immigration or not, don't get so distracted by it that you don't pay attention to the number of Democrats now who have taken money from foreign governments. There's just a drip, 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 drip. Doesn't make you kind of wonder, like, look, I support Ukraine, but I do kind of wonder, how many people are cutting deals under the table on that? I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Zelensky, by the way, is going to meet with Donald Trump today. Don't know when, but Trump announced that they're going to have a meeting. Maybe it's next Friday, but I think it's today, that they're going to have a meeting and resolve some issues. And Trump's going to make it clear to him he needs a peace deal. And frankly, I think Zelensky does need a peace deal. I don't know what that peace deal is going to look like. I think the Russians are getting so many people killed at this point. Maybe if you just let them keep the land that they've got, and then you bolster Ukrainian forces, perhaps you can find a deal. But Trump's going to put him in his place. He attacked J.D. Vance. He should not have attacked J.D. Vance. I don't know who's getting money from the Ukrainians. And I don't know which Republicans are bought and paid for by foreign governments. But it's remarkable to me. We've now got the former senator of New Jersey, the former deputy chief of staff of the governor of New York, and the soon-to-be former mayor of New York City, all on the payroll of foreign governments, all lecturing us on patriotism, all of them championing Joe Biden, all of them betraying their country. This isn't exactly America first. Oh, you know who's running on that agenda? Yeah, not the Democrats. Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States from storm-ravaged Georgia, where I am actually having to do live radio. So, y'all, 3 hours of this, and then I got 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. ahead of me on local radio on WSB. So, very long day for me. I'm actually doing this on battery backup without power at the house, trying to make sure you've got something fresh. The last night, yesterday, actually, I guess last night, I showed my wife a video of, it is the Howard Franklin Bridge across Tampa Bay. It is a 15,900 foot bridge that goes across Tampa Bay. And at 3:21 p.m. yesterday, water was coming up over between the storm surge and the wind. Water was lapping up over this bridge as people were driving. It was wild video. It was kind of crazy. They hadn't closed it even before the storm chop. I showed my wife that video, and the first thing she said was, "There ain't a woman driving across that bridge." And my son saw it, and he says, "100% redneck." I mean, the video was remarkably wild. With the water from Tampa Bay up to the bridge and lapping it over. The storm surge just insane with what's happening. It's just brutal stuff out there overnight, and even this morning as the sun is rising here. The amount of power that's out. In fact, last night before I went to bed, we've got an ice machine in the house. I filled it up and then put in like the milk and the other perishable items we wanted to make sure we could use without going in and out of the refrigerator, and just having to do stuff like that last night. It was just not a good night last. It was rough. Category 4 landfall, the wind and the storm surge. So in any event, prayers appreciated for the people down here. You may want to consider donation to the Salvation Army, the Red Cross, or something like that, because a lot of people are going to be in a lot of need as the sun begins to rise and the damage is being assessed here. Brian Kemp was in GEMA, the Georgia Emergency Management Agency. In fact, he's going to join me on local radio, 3 p.m. Eastern today on WSB. Ron DeSantis, of course, has been out very up. I mean, his with Tallahassee being luckily the storm was to the east of Tallahassee. So for those of you who don't know, if you're unfamiliar with the hurricane, the right side of a storm is the worst side of the storm. Now, I say right. I don't say east, west, north. And it typically, if it's coming up out of the Gulf, it is the northeast side is the worst because of the way the storm rotation is, the counterclockwise storm rotation is. However, if the storm is moving to the west, it's going to be to the north is going to be the bad part of it. That'll be the right, because it's the direction of the storm. The right side of it is the worst side of the storm. And luckily for Tallahassee, which thought it was going to get a direct hit, it just wasn't necessarily, it wasn't the case, but plenty of just devastation in Florida, South Georgia, and everything else. All right, I got to move on. I got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. If you want to be involved in a great organization that teaches you how to be an effective volunteer, go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today, americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. They will be able to encourage you and teach you how to go door to door to explain conservatism, common sense solutions from conservatives to your neighbors. They'll teach you how to go to City Hall. They'll teach you how to go to all the way up to the state government and to your congressman to advocate for free markets and free people for common sense conservative solutions. They'll also make you the smartest friend in your circle of friend group. All you have to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Sign up with AFP. They'll give you all the information you need to get involved. They will give you all the facts and figures to make you smarter than everybody else. They'll teach you how to door knock. They'll teach you how to get people engaged and get people out to vote. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. If you would do me a favor, please, if you would text Army, the word Army, text that word, ARMY, to 33777. And I'm going to send you back a link. Click the link. If you put in your first and last name, your zip code, and your email address, I don't need your phone number. I'll take it if you want to give it to me. I don't need it. But as we go around the country, we will be able to keep up with you, keep in touch with you. And also, housekeeping note as well. For those of you who are up listening to me on WICC, I got a phone call yesterday from someone who's very upset that the show is going away. I want to explain this one to you because I'm always upset to lose an audience, but I actually really support what this station is doing. It's bad for me, but it's actually great for you guys. There was a very big news station that has gone out of business, news talk station that's gone out of business up that covers that part of the country. And so WICC is in Bridgeport. It's got a brilliant signal. I mean, just brilliant signal, brilliantly run station. And they decided, you know what, we can get rid of all of our national voices and just do local. And for a lot of radio stations that can do that, that's kind of the secret to reviving and resuscitating radio, is doing as many local voices as possible. So I'm sad about leaving, but I'm really excited for that radio station because it's filling a market that was poorly served by another station that's now gone away. And they've got a brilliant management team there, and they're going to be able to do great things. So I'm sorry to leave you, but I'm excited for WICC in its future. I'm on WTIC in Hartford. You might be able to pick up my signal there. And if you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you'll be able to get my live stream, the podcast. So listen to your local station live. You can listen to my podcast on the way home, whatever you need to do. But keep in touch with me. If you text Army to 33777, you'll be able to keep in touch. I'll be able to track you, and I'm sure we'll be doing affiliate visits, so we'll still get up there, and I'll let you know about it. But yeah, I'm sorry to lose you guys, but also I really am genuinely excited for what the station has in the works, and really do wish the station absolute best of luck. It's a great plan they put out there. Now, I want to move on. At the end of the show yesterday, Vice President Pence texted me, and a little bit of a name drop there, not really intentional. He just actually did text me. We were together at the beginning of the week in Kiowa Island, and one of my points that I made on stage in a conversation was, I'm actually very encouraged about the future of the conservative movement beyond this populist strain, beyond the bad ideas that are being resurrected about, for example, the bad economic views of the 50s and 60s, things like that. I'm really excited because at the state level, the conservative movement is putting forward great governors. You've got Brian Kemp in Georgia. You've got Ron DeSantis in Florida. You've got Glenn Youngkin in Virginia. You've got Kevin Stitt in Oklahoma, Greg Abbott in Texas, Jeff Landry in Louisiana, Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, Bill Lee in Tennessee. You've got Kim Reynolds, and you just got I can't name them all, but you have brilliant governors around the country who are, many of them, very committed conservatives who are very committed to reducing the size and scope of state government in people's lives and fighting Washington. And it does give me hope. The farm team for the Republican Party in the future is decidedly conservative, and not necessarily just full MAGA populist, but actually some principled conservatism that is defined for sake of principles beyond just the things Donald Trump wants. So Mike Pence has this op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Let me read you some of this. Republicans have an opportunity to deliver a decisive victory this November, not only for their party, but for the entire country. The key lies in doing two things: exposing the undeniable failures of Kamala Harris and the Democrats, and promoting the conservative policies that made the prior administration the most successful in generations. While I have pledged to stay out of the presidential campaign, I firmly believe that the path to victory for Republicans down ballot, whether running for the House, Senate, governorships, or state legislatures, depends on keeping those two objectives at the center of the campaign. The 2024 election is unusual in that both candidates have a record in the White House. It's the first election in which both candidates are running away from those records. It's understandable that Democrats would want to distance themselves from Ms. Harris's record of failure. As borders are, she's overseen the worst border crisis in American history and allowed more than 10 million illegal immigrants to enter our country. On her watch, inflation soared to a 40-year high, housing is the least affordable it's ever been since the 1980s, and Americans have racked up more than $1 trillion in credit card debt, an all-time record. She bragged about convincing President Biden to order the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, which embarrassed our nation on the world stage and emboldened our enemies. Meanwhile, Republicans running for office at all levels of government have no reason to retreat from successful conservative policies. The previous administration tax cuts, which fueled wage gains for American workers and created millions of new jobs. We secured the southern border and reduced illegal immigration to historic lows, bringing security back to our communities. We embraced America's role as the leader of the free world. We invested trillions to rebuild our military, restore America's strength, and our administration was proudly pro-life. These policies didn't just work, they resonated powerfully with the American people and fueled the historic Republican victory in 2016. 4 years later, those policies helped attract 10 million additional votes. That was no accident. It was a testament to the strength of a conservative agenda that was unabashedly pro-jobs, pro-family, pro-life, and pro-America. That's Mike Pence writing in the Wall Street Journal. And this is the thing. When you look at, for example, the record of the Republicans in Florida, in Georgia, in Ohio, in Tennessee, in South Carolina, in Virginia, in Texas, you name it, Republican governors have been leading on tax reform, on school choice, on deregulation for small businesses, on attracting bigger businesses into states, many times not with government handouts, but with just attractive business policies. California, for example, has got to throw money at businesses at this point to attract them to come into state. In Georgia, they just point out their deregulation and their education policies, and also they can do tax abatements on land. It has been a compelling way to attract business. In Florida points out they don't have an income tax. They've got low regulation. They don't have an income tax. This is just a great look. It's good policies. It is common sense conservative solutions. Mike Pence in his op-ed is essentially telling Republicans, don't run away from conservatism. There's no reason to reinvent conservatism. Orrin Cass is an economist who he's funded by about a bunch of liberal organizations, but they say that he's actually a conservative because he worked for Mitt Romney at some point. He's come out with all these bad economic protectionist ideas. He's a big defender of tariffs. He had a very Maoist sort of commentary the other day that the individuals, if we allow individuals to kind of shape their own policies and ideas, it might undermine the collective. That's something that Mao or Lenin would say, and yet that's what he wants to bring to the table. There's no reason for conservatives to embrace the Orrin Cass agenda of collectivism at the economic scale, because we all know the very basic lesson of economics is individuals in arm's length transactions decide what's best for their families, and in that compromise in the arm's length transaction, each side gets what it wants with minimal loss and therefore becomes what's best for society. Everyone trading together in arm's length transactions produces a great economy. Everyone trading in arm's length transactions produces a great future. We shouldn't abandon that. And that's Pence's point. And I think he's right on that. Do you trust the government? Given how many of you think that Eric Adams is being indicted for his vocal criticisms of immigration, even as he praised Joe Biden and blamed it all on Donald Trump, I suspect you don't trust the government. Do you trust the policymakers who set COVID policy? I bet you don't. Do you trust the bureaucrats who control the federal education programs? I bet you don't. Why then should we trust federal bureaucrats and policymakers to set a national industrial policy? You really going to trust them? At some point, you can't stop the left from taking over. If you give the government the power to set an economic industrial policy for the nation, you're giving the left the ability to turn it into promotion of transgenderism or some such. And that's kind of Pence's point. We know what works. We know the ideas that work. We know how to get things done in this country at an individual level. We know the government's not competent, and we should not hide from the good ideas. We should not hide from what works. Republicans can tackle the debt by growing the economy. We can, in fact, preserve a culture of life in this country. And as Pence says at the end here, we don't want to win simply for the sake of victory. We want to win with a mandate to lead, govern, and restore the promise of this great nation by holding Ms. Harris and Democrats responsible for the record of failure and by embracing the conservative policies that have delivered success in the past. This is how to ensure a more peaceful and more prosperous future. This is how Republicans win. This is how Americans win. He's not wrong on that. Focus on what works. Focus on the tried and true. Focus on conservatism. Focus on small government. Focus on families. Focus on competition. Bring competition into the education system, which means expanding school choice. I've got to speak day after tomorrow. I'm speaking to a group in Sea Island, Georgia. And one of the things I want to emphasize to them, it's a group of legislators in the state of Georgia, is that we need to go to the distance. We've started piecemeal, small ball school choice, but in every single state where school choice has expanded, you know what's happened? The states become more conservative. Every single state that has expansive school choice has become more Republican. Republicans should do this. Why? Because Democrats despise school choice. They don't like the competition aspect of it. But in every state where it's been tried and done, Republicans have come out on top. Republicans have made the state more Republican. You want to hold on to power, you got to do things that people like, but that are Republican initiatives, and school choice is one of them. It's not hard. You just have to have the will to do it. Deregulating for small businesses is another way. You promote jobs, you stimulate your economy. Keep in mind, the people who have moved to Texas in the last decade are more conservative than the natives in Dallas and in Austin and the urban core of Texas. The people moving into Texas are more likely to vote for Ted Cruz than a lot of the native Texans in the suburbs. Other Republican states can do the same thing, attracting people away from California, Illinois, New York, things like that. But in order to do those sorts of things, they got to be committed to free markets. They got to be committed to freedom. They got to be committed to families. They got to be committed to school choice. They got to be committed to small government. And if you do that, you're going to keep winning at the state level. And look at the Republican farm team for the future. So many great Republican candidates to run for office in the future, all right now in state legislatures and in governor's mansions around the country. It's because conservatism continues to be a guiding principle, even as people just want entertainment out of Washington, even as people are willing to abandon Washington as not quite serious. At the state level, they know it still matters, and they want politicians who matter. And that's why Republicans are still doing very well. It should be encouraging to every one of you. If you need computer help that's encouraging to you, go to visioncomputers.com. They can build you a computer. Call them at 404 Computers. Well, they'll build you a computer and they'll save you money. Not only that, they'll give you their 5-star service. So many thousands of 5-star reviews about Vision Computers. You don't believe me? Go to Google and see the reviews yourself. They're incredible. They do such a good job. And if you want their tech support, where literally you get a phone number in 15 seconds or less, you get the answer to what's going on with your computer. They can even remote in to fix your computer. They can do email support, printer support. They can keep you online. You're in the gig economy. They can help you. If you don't have a computer from them, for $179 a year, they'll give you their tech support. If you build the computer with them, they're going to give it to you for free. All you have to do is call them at 404-COMPUTE or go to visioncomputers.com. If you call them at 404-COMPUTE, and you tell them Eric sent you, you're going to save even more money. You're going to get a great computer. You're going to get great customer service, and they're going to keep you online and up to date, and they will keep you out of trouble. If you're an independent contractor, this is the perfect thing for you. Your own in-house IT department, free if you buy a computer with them, otherwise just $179 a year. 404-COMPUTE or visioncomputers.com. Welcome back. This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. If you are in the business of business and your business is buying a business, buying a building, buying a franchise, buying out a business competitor, or you need something like a heavy equipment loan for trucks for your company, things like that, you can reach out to First Liberty at firstlibertyga.com. They make their own lending decisions. They'd love to work with you if they can. firstlibertyga.com. Businesses only. Now, I want to spend just a moment here, and I'll probably get into this later in the show. But my buddy Cole texted me last night while everybody still had power. And he says, am I wrong to think the polling is unusually flaky this time around? And I get this from a lot of people. And you know, my rule is don't focus on the individual poll. Focus on the polling average. But the reason the polls seem highly flaky this time and jumping around all over the place is because this is what a tied race looks like. And y'all have not really seen, nor have I, a really tied race in a very long time. The Bush-Gore race came very close, and Clinton versus Trump kind of did, except for the Electoral College polling. This is tied even in the Electoral College states, in the swing states. The Real Clear Politics polling average, kind of funny, yesterday had a tie in the battleground states. This morning has Kamala Harris like up 0.2 of a point. The polls are bouncing around because it's a tied race. Nate Silver actually does a very good job of explaining that you should pay attention to the polls that bounce around more than the polls that never do. Because the polls that never do are clearly weighting their polling and in a way to avoid a bounce. And the polls that bounce around, like, for example, the New York Times Siena College poll, is a poll that publishes outliers. And sometimes the New York Times outliers are actually right. And I've noticed a trend happening among Democrats right now. The polling is not giving Democrats what they want. Think about it. They threw Joe Biden out of the race. They brought in Kamala Harris. They rallied everyone to her. They circled the wagons. They convinced themselves there was enthusiasm. And the race is tied. She's not doing a whole lot better than Joe Biden was doing, only slightly. Have a scandal in North Carolina with Mark Robinson. Republicans running away from him, costing them that seat. Donald Trump's still ahead there. In Arizona, they have a terrible candidate in the Republican Party for Senate, Carrie Lake. She's going to lose that seat. Donald Trump's winning. In Georgia, you got 2 Senate Democrats now, and Donald Trump's winning. The fact of the matter is, Donald Trump's winning right now. In a tied race, the advantage is to Trump. However, one caution for the GOP. Pennsylvania remains a problem for the Republicans. Pennsylvania is a state that Donald Trump has won. He has blue-collar support there. But it does look like Josh Shapiro's ground game is helping Harris. And it does look like the urban and suburban opposition to Donald Trump is overcoming the rural support for Donald Trump. But it's still a very winnable race in Pennsylvania for Donald Trump. And if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, while he's winning Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, he's going to win the race. I can't emphasize for you enough right now. I normally have a sense. In 2016, I got it wrong. I really thought Clinton was going to beat Trump. I couldn't fathom that everybody else hated her as much as I do. Turns out they did. But 2000, 2004, 2008, 2012, 2020, I've been able to tell you who is going to win the race. And honestly, I genuinely tell you, if you put a gun to my head and told me who's going to win, I would say Trump right now. But I'm not entirely convinced I'm correct, because this is the most tied race I think any of us have ever seen.